Okay, and when I speak for my husband as well, my better half. Okay. So I'm also, if you see me looking at my notes, I actually know this by heart, but being that it's very emotional and whatever, it's easier if I just look at the paper. So, hi everyone, and I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for coming. I know it's not easy getting out at night, so I really appreciate it. Most of all, I really want to express my sincere appreciation to my friends and neighbors in this wonderful community. And I include, of course, those that came from out of this community and my good friends. And I want to thank everybody for the warm welcome that I received when I moved here. It's going to be a year, Mir Hashem, at the end of the month. So, yeah, and I consider myself so fortunate to be part of this wonderful community. And I always say that here it's like an out-of-town community with in-town amenities, and it's really special. And a special shout out to Shaindy Schachter for introducing me to the place, showing me around, and convincing me to move here.
I convinced Shaindy, so.
Okay. It's true. Okay. All right. It's our privilege to be part of the KSW Kehillah with the leadership of our special Rav and Rebbitzin, whose guidance and warmth continuously inspire us and support us in countless ways. And we're honored to have our Rebbitzin Chami here with us tonight. Okay. As many of you, let me show up my phone, and if everybody does the same, that would be great. Okay. As many of you know, I'm generally more of a reserved and private person, and I don't usually do any public speaking. I was asked to speak numerous times during the Pirkei Avos, but I respectfully declined. And this talk is really out of my comfort zone, and I'll share with you why I decided to have this gathering today. When we sponsored the Kiddush about 3 or 4 weeks ago, Le'ilui Nishmas, my son, on his 4th yard site, many people came over and said, "Tell me about your son." And it isn't something I'm able to do in one sentence, nor in a paragraph. My son Yisrael, Alav Shalom, was born with many disabilities. He was born with multiple developmental and medical challenges, resulted in his inability to hear or speak, as well as many cognitive impairments and other related difficulties. And during the Shiva, I had to do all the talking because no one was able to share any stories with me. And during the Shiva and later, I received so many messages and texts and letters and phone calls of people telling me that they were so inspired by the stories that my husband and I had shared that they really made significant changes in their outlook and actions. And many suggested that I share it in a more public forum. And at that time, I was not up to it. However, as time went by, I realized I could offer a personal perspective on growth through challenging times that could provide chizuk and inspiration to others. And I first gave this talk 3 years ago upstate in my summer home. And I was amazed at how people were inspired, taking from it what resonated most with them, and translating it into meaningful shifts in their outlook and perspective. I didn't have to prepare this speech in a typical manner. This is a speech that wrote itself in 33 years, or right now 37. A lifetime filled with countless experiences, many, many sleepless nights, and I hope, and I'm mispalel, tonight it will yield the same results. We say every day, Elkai neshama shenasata bi tahorahi, ata barasa, ata yitzarta, v'ata nefachta, v'ata asad lipla mimeni. Yisrael was a neshama, tahora, who came to this world as such, as all neshamas do, but he also left as an neshama tahora. And when we wrote a Sefer Torah, and we did the Achnasa Sefer Torah in Flatbush, the line to write an os was out the door. A huge crowd, probably half of Flatbush, joined to escort the Sefer Torah that represented the special neshama. And today, Baruch Hashem, the Sefer Torah is here in the Aron Kodesh at KSW. And Yisrael, Olav Shalom, does not need an aliyah. His neshama was perfect. But I hope that this will be a schutz for all of us. I attended a fascinating speech during the 9 days given by Miriam Leogas on Jewish history. And during the lecture, she asked the audience, is history a science or an art? What do you think? Anybody want to venture? Okay. So after much discussion, I guess that lecture there was discussion, this one does not. Okay, we concluded that it is a science and an art because we need the specific dates and events, but then we need the art, which is the perspective of the writers of history. So I thought this is a great segue into our topic today, growth through challenging times, because if you don't take the events that happen in your life, which is your history, and add the artistic lens of your perspective and growth, it just remains cold scientific history. And our challenge is to grow from it. And the Rav spoke about this in reference to Akedas Yitzchak this past Shabbos. Everyone has challenges on many different levels and in different areas of life. And our goal when dealing with these challenges is to stretch and grow, not stress and shrink, and to turn to Hashem and not away from Hashem, and to ask ourselves, lima, for what am I meant to do with this, rather than why or why me. And this is a lot easier to type and read, but how do you translate and implement this into real life? So just to give you some background, we were a young couple, all of 23 years old. And we know, 23-year-olds are babies. With a 10-month-old baby. That was my daughter, Dini.
Oh,
Yes, that we waited for almost 3 years. Definitely worth the wait. I only have one daughter, but got it right with her.
She did. Yes.
And when I was 5 months pregnant with my son, Yisrael, I was told that the baby wasn't growing as it should. And this continued throughout the pregnancy. And the doctors were clueless what was causing it and what I could expect. And remember, this goes back over 35 years ago. They weren't as advanced in fetal monitoring. And most doctors predicted that the baby would never make it to delivery or live. And after 9 months, he was born weighing only 2 pounds. And he remained in the NICU for 5 months, and unfortunately was left with many severe disabilities. So for a few years, he lived at home, and then when we could no longer provide for his needs, he was in a group home. So what do you do when you're 23 and your whole world comes crashing down? So you do what our Bubbies and Zaydis have done through the ages, and we turn to Hashem, and we turn to the Tehillim, which is our source of comfort and solace throughout the many difficult times. And I'd like to base this talk on the Pasuk in Tehillim, Kapitel Tzadi Beis, which is Mizmor Shir Liyom Shabbos, Tov Lodos Hashem, L'Zamer L'Shimcha Elyon, and specifically L'Hagit Baboker Chazdecha, V'Munascha B'Leilos. And Rashi explains in that Pasuk that it's not referring, when it says Mizmor Shir Liyom Shabbos, it's not the weekly Shabbos, but the world to come, where man will achieve the spiritual perfection that we only glimpse on Shabbos. And that's why on Shabbos we say Me'ein Olam Haba, Yom Shabbos Menucha, because Shabbos gives us the glimpse of what Olam Haba will be like. So the literal translation is, we'll relate of L'Hagit Baboker Chazdecha V'Munascha B'Leilos. The literal translation is, we will relate your kindness in the dawn and your faithfulness, Emunah, in the night. Dawn symbolizes the Geula, and the night is Galus. And we can understand that we'll speak about Chesed in the Boker and faith in the darkness. And I'd like to focus on the concept of Emunah and gratitude when we go through challenging times. So first of all, how do we define Emunah? Emunah is the belief that no circumstances are random and that everything is directed by Hashem who loves us. Bitachon is like one step further, is when that belief is filtered and inculcated into our behaviors. In this situation, my situation, the doctors had no idea what caused this and told me it was a fluke. It was not genetic. In fact, we sent his records all over the world and we got no answers. So I didn't go to medical school, but because of Emunah, I know this was no fluke. This was no accident. Because by Hashem, there's no plan B. We know in Devarim, Parshas Hazinu, it says, Hatzor Tamim Pa'alo, Hikol Drach of Mishpat. Hashem's ways are perfect. It wasn't supposed to be a healthy baby and then something went wrong. This was plan A. We humans are used to having plan A, plan B. We want to plan a trip. So plan A is where we really want to go, and plan B, in case it rains, we'll go somewhere indoors. Or if you want your daughter to go to a certain seminary, so that's plan A, and if she doesn't get in, she'll go to plan B. But the seminary that she got in, that was plan A. We just don't always realize it. So as difficult as it sometimes is to accept, in the case of our son, it was plan A for him to be born the way he was. And it was not a case of a healthy fetus, that something went wrong, as the doctors might want you to believe. This was plan A by Hashem, because by Hashem, there's no plan B. So in our lifetime, it's our work to keep these Emunah muscles in top form so that we can access them as needed. And I'm fortunate to have very strong Emunah genes in my DNA. My parents are Holocaust survivors who retained their Emunah and Bitachon despite the horrors they endured. So how do we maintain and strengthen our Emunah? I think we can compare it to running. If you want to start running for a marathon, you can't decide one day just to start running. You first walk, and then you build it up to start running, and then you have to practice and keep at it. Otherwise, your muscles will not maintain the strength. We all learned the psukim. It's okay. It's okay, I'll take a drink. We all learned the psukim, the tefillos, the mefarshim in school, and we can easily quote all of them.
Oh, yeah, that's you.
What?
That's what you think.
Okay. Mimi can always save the day if it's getting too heavy, she can save it. And we're all tested on it, right? Okay. But often in life, we have to put it into practice, and we're called upon putting all of it into practice, and that's really the test, not the ones that we were worried about. It's going to go on a report card and all. And this can be compared to standing at the edge of the pool and studying every swimming technique in theory. But the true challenge begins when we step into the water and we have to apply those skills. While my son was in the hospital, in the NICU for 5 months, with his life hanging between life and death, I found out I was pregnant with my son, Mendy. Here I had a baby who was hanging between life and death, and we didn't know what was the cause of all of this. And now I had the additional worries of this upcoming baby. Would it be a healthy baby? How do I handle it all? And I remember going to my parents' home that night and crying. I said to my father, Olav Shalom, Tati, how much does a person have to take? And I was crying. And without a moment's hesitation, he answered, as much as the Eibshter gives. He didn't have to think about it. He didn't look it up in any Sfarim. Now, I'm sure if we went around this table, probably everybody can give the same answer, right? But let's think who was giving this answer. This was my father, who survived Auschwitz at age 16, and he lost his parents and his brother. And this was his daughter crying to him, and we're talking about his grandson as well. But this was his firm belief, and he lived and practiced real Emunah and Bitachon through all his life challenges. And this was my mantra, or this is my mantra, the words I try to live by. And we all know that Shidduchim is a parsha that requires us to use our Emunah and Bitochin muscles. So I once confided to someone who had a son with special needs, and I told her I was worried, what's going to be with Shidduchim for my kids? I mean, we all know how, picky and a little bit, whatever everybody is. So what was going to be with my children in Shidduchim, even though we knew it wasn't genetic? And she told me again, something simple but profound. Shaindy, she said to me, the same Hashem that gave you Yisrael also prepared the Shidduchim for your children. Simple but profound. It's the same Hashem who sends us what we see as good and what we perceive as not as good. And I don't use the word bad because nothing bad comes from Hashem. We just don't always see it as good. And so it was. Baruch Hashem, each of my children found wonderful spouses, and they got engaged among the first in their class, and the shidduch process went very easily. And I didn't get any no responses because of the situation. In fact, my son-in-law, her wonderful husband, when he was told about my daughter's special brother, he replied, I'm sure that makes her even more caring and sensitive person. You must believe it's coming from Hashem. Not some things yes and some things not. And now, I would like to take a pause for a reality check. I also use this reality check speaking to people that came to the Shiva. This all sounds so idealistic, and you get the feeling that, I sailed all through it because I had the Emunah and Bitochin. And very often we read these books by people who go through challenges, and they speak about how the Emunah helped them, and the Bitochin certainly is so important. But I think a lot of times these books, at the end, everything gets tied up with a pretty pink bow, and there's a lot of toxic positivity. And I'm really just a very regular person, and no Rebbitzin, and just very regular. And I want to be real and transparent with you. First, we'll never tell anybody dealing with a difficulty, oh, you must be such a special person, Hashem chose you. Reality check. We are, and everybody that knows myself and my husband, a very regular couple. And parents who had the dreams and hopes and aspirations that were shattered and were not to be. And in the words of Eicha, Al Eila Ani Bachia, and Al Eila Ein Yardadima. I really shed rivers of tears throughout all these years. And really, it never got easier. And I share my pain, not for you to feel sorry for me, but to be very real with you. Every time I went to visit Yisrael, Olav Shalom, I recalled a very famous pasuk that we say on Yom Kippur. And recently they made it into a song. During the Elah, when we're getting all emotional and nervous that the day is coming to an end and the judgment will be sealed, we speak about Shari Dima, Shalom Alu. The Shari Dima, the gates of tears, never closes. And there's a beautiful Yi Ratzon over there. And it says, I always get very emotional when they say that in Shul. Yi Ratzon L'fanecha, Shomea Kol B'chios, Shetasim D'masenu B'nodcha. We ask Hashem, the one who hears everyone's cries and tears, you should put Shetasim D'masenu B'nodcha. You should put it in your flask, which they say is right in front of it, the Kisei HaKavod. Lios V'tzatzilenu Mikol Gezeros Kashos Ki Levad Einenu Gilcha Levad Einenu Tluyas. And each time I visit my son, I would daven Hashem to save the tears. And when we get up to this tefillah, I would remind Hashem, remember, like all the tears, and I would say, Shaindy, you're so ridiculous. We just finished saying all the Zichronos, and we say Ata Zolcher and Ata Bochin Kloyos, and I'm reminding Hashem, remember all the tears, but I guess it made me feel good. And my machzor was always black pages. I don't even know why I ever put on mascara. And My husband always tries to buy psichol and Elah so he can stand in front of the Aron and pour out his heart. And you know, Erev Yom Kippur, there's a beautiful minhag where fathers give their children a bracha, which is really beautiful. Simcha Elokim K'Ephraim K'Menashe, and it goes on. However, in our case, and I know, in the case of all parents with children with special needs, this is a heart-wrenching bracha to give, because you know it's never going to come to fruition. And it was so painful that we used to go Erev Yom Kippur, and we had to stop, because I couldn't daven when I got to shul at night, and we started going the night before. So by the time I had to go to shul, you know, it was... Recently, S.D. Hamilton, you can listen to her on Torah anytime. I suggest you do. She's wonderful. And she has a severely disabled son. And she wrote a special tefillah with the Haskama of Rabbanim for parents of children with special needs. And this year, I said to her, S.D., we have to bring this tefillah to the public so more people will know that parents of special needs children shouldn't have to experience such tremendous pain. And if anybody needs it for anybody they know, you know, and people give brachos every Friday night, so you can just contact me. My children, Dini, Mendy, he's the one who lives in Waterbury, Hananya and Haverstraw, they're all amazing. They are the unsung heroes of my story. Every third or fourth Sunday, we would travel. Yisrael Olshon was upstate. And that meant like 2.5 hours going, 2.5 hours coming in one day. So we would try to buy the latest CD, and my husband made a contraption in the back seat of a DVD player, which he attached. So I got to hear Uncle Maishi for 3 hours there and 3 hours back. We had this goes back, 30 years ago, I think we had the first cell phone. It came literally in a briefcase. It was like this big. The cell phone was this big. It was $1,000 30 years ago, and we had it, in case of emergencies. And we would make this trip, and we would try to make it exciting for the kids. And we would take Yisrael along to the Palo Mall, for those of you that remember the Palo Mall. Bowling, shopping, for toys for him. And the kids would come. And this went on, 15, 20, whatever, till they got married. And in hindsight, thinking about it, today's kids, you want to take them to the grocery store in the car, you have to promise them some treat, why it's going to be exciting when they get there, and then they complain the whole way there. And now I thought back that these kids, 24 kids, she has 7 kids of her own, but these children, they were kids. And they never said, we don't want to go, I'd rather go to a friend, it's too long of a ride, it's boring, it's scary. They didn't. And this went on through their childhood and teen years. They loved him unconditionally, because the truth was, when they got there, there wasn't a reaction or anything. They didn't get anything back. And the kids knew. Also, he had such a gentle nature that despite the fact that he couldn't hear or speak or understand, he never hit or hurt anyone. He was truly a malach. And the kids knew that I always wore sunglasses. On the way there, on the way home, it didn't make a difference. It was dark, raining, nighttime, so they wouldn't see me cry. And my husband would walk far away when we had to say goodbye, and he would tell the kids he had to make some phone calls, and of course, he didn't. And my kids are truly, truly special. They're more sensitive and caring than most kids because of their circumstances. And this year, when we had the Yahrzeit Suda, I paid tribute in my speech to my wonderful kids, and I said, Zacharti la chesed miurayach, ahavas k'lusayach, what they did when they were younger and even not so young. And the place where Yisrael stayed was visually beautiful and thoughtfully designed. It was also one of the most emotionally painful places to visit, with children facing every type of disability. And the pain of those nights, Emunah and it was only through my Emunah that the next morning I could get out of bed and even daven. And I share this again to make it real, not to have you feel sorry for me. The time to practice and build your Emunah is all the time, especially in the good times, so that we could flex our Emunah muscles when we need it. It's okay to have questions, as long as you know that there aren't always answers. There's a story about an old woman who was a Holocaust survivor, and they asked her, after all you suffered, don't you have questions to Hashem, for Hashem? And she replied in Yiddish, of course I have questions, but I don't want the Tata to call me up and give me the answers. And when I mentioned this to my son Mendy, that I would be basing my speech on the pasuk, he reminded me that he used this pasuk, he quoted this pasuk by Levaya, saying that my parents told us, meaning we, told the children in reference to Yisrael, Zichron Livracha, that it's okay to be sad and maybe not understand, but always remember it's Hashem's plan, and when Mashiach comes, he'll be healthy and we will understand. Okay, so it's getting heavy, so we have to interject something. The basis of our Emunah is realization that it all comes from Hashem and we are not in control. I always say that we're not in control of the big things and not even the smallest thing. Everyone knows, at least some people know, and the rest will get to know, that I am the container queen. I like everything in containers. To me, the container store is the equivalent of Toys R Us for kids. So after some self-analysis, since I'm a therapist, I concluded, why do I love it? Why do I want everything in containers? Because this is the one thing I can control. Where my pasta goes, where my cookies go, where my cholent goes, cholent beans, or anything. So now I say that my containers really are a symbol of my Emunah, because I know that's just about the only thing I can control. And the best way, one of the best stress-reducing techniques is to remember you're not in control. You do yeshtadlus, but you cannot control the outcome. We cannot control our circumstances, but we can control our reaction to it. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz, and he wrote a famous book, definitely worth reading, Man's Search for Meaning, in which he wrote, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Even when external circumstances are beyond our control, we retain the freedom to choose our attitude and find meaning in how we respond. He was a prisoner in Auschwitz, and he observed that people who found some meaning in their life to their suffering were more likely to survive emotionally. Meaning that you had to find meaning in your life, unlike Freud, who was all about just pleasure in your life. On a simplistic level, in my work as a child psychotherapist, children will come into my office saying, I hate my teacher, I'm changing schools, I don't want to go to school, and I'll ask them why. I'll validate their emotions, and then I ask them, okay, it's January now, do you think your teacher's leaving? And I say, no. I said, do you think you're really leaving the school? And they'll tell me no. So I say to them, well, it looks like you're both staying. So you have a choice. You could be miserable for the rest of the year and probably make your teacher miserable. I actually say that. Or start changing the way you view your teacher. And I ask them, I have these big oversized black sunglasses. And I tell them, put on the sunglasses. And I say, well, how does everything look? They tell me black. I said, yeah. Now take it off and let some light in, and what does everything look like? A lot brighter. Well, we often act the same way, dealing with challenging situations. We have the same temper, same tantrums, but adult versions. Like, I can't deal with this, I don't want to deal with it, I'm not dealing with it, I give up. But if you can't change your circumstances, you can change the way you think about it. So if you want to measure your growth in Emunah, since we're speaking about growth in challenging times, you can take a stress test. For those of you who had a stress test, what is a stress test? Those of you that haven't had it. They measure your blood pressure and your heart rate, and then they stress out your heart by making you walk on a treadmill with increasing speed and elevation. And after that, they measure your blood pressure again to see how long it takes for your blood pressure to return to normal. To measure our growth in Emunah, we can see how long does it take for our Emunah to kick in when we have a challenging situation. The better shape we're in, by continuously working on our Emunah muscles, by saying, I'm not in control, and this is where Hashem wants me to be. This is plan A. The sooner we can refocus and recalibrate. So, how do you achieve the balance to lead a normal life with such challenging circumstances? Well, that was a question I was faced with, myself and my husband. And we had to find that balance to provide a normal, happy life, ourselves and our kids. You can withdraw and have your pity party. Although people may show up, no one wants to stay. It's not easy, and sometimes you have to fake it till you make it. And so on my list of people that I thank for enabling to do so, I always include MAC, Maybelline, Lancome, Revlon, etc. Just fake it till you make it. Oh, you don't remember this? You remember?
I think I do.
It's just
That's
that.
very good.
Okay, I just know that it'll be too much otherwise. So Leah heard a similar version upstate in my first speech. So I'd like to take a moment to talk about children with special needs. And we know that in Yeshaya there's a pasuk, Kol hanikra b'shmi l'chvodi b'rasiv yitzartiv afasisiv. Hashem says that all creations exist for the purpose of honoring and reflecting Hashem's glory. We may then wonder, how do children born with special needs who cannot perform any mitzvahs bring glory to Hashem? We know that it's a mitzvah of Hakel, and how every 7 years after Shemitah, all of Am Yisrael, men, women, and even children, are commanded to assemble in the Beis Hamikdash to hear the reading of the Torah. But the Gemara has a question over there. The men came to learn, and the women came to hear. But why the small children? And the Gemara answers, Lahavi schar l'nevi'eim, to bring schar. My husband has to go learn, so she left. Sometimes these neshamas, these pure neshamas, come into the world with handicaps, whose purpose nobody can understand. And we may question, what's the purpose of these souls? And the answer is, litin schar l'mevi'ehem, to give schar to the parents, because these children strengthen the parents, they strengthen the other siblings, and they cause their parents and siblings and the people around them to be more caring, sensitive, and grateful, and thereby bringing kavod to Hashem. I spoke about my father, Olav Shalom, about his Emunah and his Bitochin. One might expect that after all the horrors he went through, he would have been a bitter person. Not only wasn't he bitter, he was warm, friendly, with a great sense of humor, and he told the best jokes. And everyone loved him. And I recently spoke by his Yartzeit Seudah, and I shared memories with everyone about how he went down to the Holocaust Museum in Washington to give a testimony. And all of us, children and grandchildren, we have the video. And in this video, he speaks about all the horrors that he endured, both during the deportation and his time in Auschwitz. And at the end of the video, he thanks Hashem that he survived, and that he was zocheh to have children and grandchildren, even great-grandchildren, going derech HaTorah. And his last line is so powerful, and truly a life lesson. And again, my mantra. He says, I went through a lot, but I am happy. In psychology, there are various modalities, and one of them is dialectical behavior therapy, which emphasizes the concept that two seemingly opposing truths can coexist. The statement, I went through a lot, which was true, but I am happy, reflects this dialectical perspective, acknowledging that there could be pain and hardship alongside resilience and growth. Now let's go back to the pasuk, Lahagid Babover Chazdacha. There are many psukim focusing on speaking about Hashem's chesed. There's this pasuk and Ashrei and Hallel, and of course, one of my favorite, which is Nishmas. I make a practice of saying it every day. And Reb Nessie Hamilton spoke about this, and she said, we say, Ilu finu malishir kayam shonei nurina kamangala, right? And then, Ein anachnu maspikim. It's endless what we can thank Hashem, and we can never say enough. And there's that song, if I lived 1,000 years, if I lived 1,000,000 years, we can never stop praising Hashem. And she said, why is that? And she gave a story that, let's say, she gave an example. You buy your friend a scarf. So the friend calls you up the next day, thank you so much for the scarf. I really enjoy it. And the next day, she calls you up again, thank you for the scarf, it's great. And the next day, and after a while, you're like, as the teenagers say, this is so socially off. You thank me, and that's it. But think if we decide in the morning, today I'm going to thank Hashem. From the moment I get up, I'm going to thank Him for everything. So we wake up and we say, thank you Hashem that I'm breathing, right? And then we go wash Wasser. Thank you Hashem that I'm walking. But while you're walking, you're also breathing. And then you go to the refrigerator. Thank you Hashem that I could walk to the refrigerator and open the refrigerator and there's food inside, but you're still breathing, walking, thanking Him for the food. It's endless because you can never stop because it's one continuous thing that's going on and on. So we have to keep talking. So why, okay, we say it, but why do we have to keep on talking about Hashem's chesed? Just recognize it. Why constantly talk about it and all these tefillos with it? And I think it's because sometimes we have these wonderful aha moments where we're like, something great happens to us and we're like, wow, Hashem loves me, hug from Hashem, this is great, it's so good. But later, when things are not going as we would like, it's kind of like riding in wet sand. It's easier than dry sand, but then the wave of water comes and what we perceive is not such good times and it washes it away. And why do we struggle so much, and kids as well, adults, with expressing gratitude? Many kids and even some adults don't bother saying thank you when you get something. Why is that? Because when we say thank you, moda ani, we are acknowledging that someone did something for you. And that's why people struggle with it, because we live in an entitled me generation. Es kommt mir. It's coming to me, so you didn't do anything for me. The story is told of a convention of neurologists in 2018. They were discussing a strange phenomenon known as POTS syndrome, where people faint as soon as they get out of bed in the morning. So one of the speakers, Professor Linda McMahon, said that after years of studying this, she came to the conclusion that this is a result of the quick transition from prone position to standing, and the body requires 12 seconds for the blood to flow from the feet to the brain. So she recommended that everyone should sit on their bed, count to 12 to prevent any dizziness. Her lecture was greeted with enthusiastic applause. And then another professor, a religious Jew, asked to speak and said that we have an old tradition, and we recite a prayer giving thanks to the Creator immediately upon waking. It's 12 words, and if you say it slowly, it's 12 seconds. Moda ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayim shachzarta bi nishmasi v'chemla rabba emunah. And then they all stood up and they applauded for the Creator of the world. And I'll now share a personal story about gratitude that I think is probably the one that leaves the greatest impression on everybody. And Miriam, those that came to the Shiva heard it all. also. You know, and I wish Shaindy Greenwald was here because it involves her father, who was our Rav at the time, with label cats, very big tzaddik.
She's at her niece's birth.
What? Yeah, I know, she told me, she called me up. So, you know, I mentioned earlier that I was, while Yisrael was in the hospital, and I found out that I was pregnant, so of course, you know, it turned my world upside down, and there were many different issues and shilas that came up. And my husband called the label cats, Latzal, and he listened and he said, this is big, and I'm gonna get you a bracha from the Stipler's son. The Stipler was no longer alive. And truthfully, in America, you know, today, of course, Reb Chaim, you know, who doesn't know who Reb Chaim Latzal was? But at that time, the Stipler's son. I said, okay. And he got back to us and he said, I called, and the Reb Chaim said that, don't worry, not only will this baby that I was carrying be okay, he will also be a very big Talmid Chacham. And I was like, okay, thank you. But you know, I didn't have the emotional headspace, so I just filed it somewhere, said thank you very much, and moved on with my life. Or I don't know if I moved on, but whatever. And as my son was starting to grow up and, you know, go to yeshiva, I said, you know, I didn't really think much until it was like about 5th grade, 6th grade, and he was getting up in the morning to say Tehillim for Cholim, and he was doing like above average in school. And then it went on a little bit, and then my husband and I looked at each other and we said, where did he come from? You know, we're like, this doesn't even make sense. And luckily my next son, you know, followed in his footsteps, but I totally forgot about it. But after a while, I realized this isn't average, like what's going on here? And fast forward to, he was 20 years old, he was in the mirror, and my husband went to a wedding in London without me, and he decided he's gonna surprise Mendy and he's gonna go see him. And he went, and at the same time he said, you know, I wanna go back to Reb Chaim. I wanna tell him that the bracha was Mekayim. I wanna thank him. So he, you know, it's not so easy, it wasn't easy to get a private audience, but if you know the right people and, you know, some money can be exchanged. So he got a driver and he got an interpreter because he doesn't speak such good Hebrew, and he got a private audience with Reb Chaim. So he told the interpreter, tell him, you know, I'm here from America, and 20 years ago he told me the whole story. And Reb Chaim, who we know was so exact with his words that even the bracha was like, everything was calculated. He said, after he heard the whole story, he said, Zug Nachamo, say it again. And, you know, my husband was looking like, I can't believe this, we're talking about the Gadol Hadar. He surely understood it the first time. And so the interpreter said the story again. And Reb Chaim said to him, to my husband, he said in Hebrew, and the interpreter interpreted, based on the amount of people that come here, there should be thousands upon thousands of people in the hospital, because nobody comes back to tell me that people are better. Mm-hmm. And he was so happy that somebody came to tell him this bracha was Mekayim, the child is really a Talmid Chacham. And you really see the importance of Hakaras HaTov. So P.S., so just was very positive. My son, who lives in Waterbury, he really is an Eloi, probably the best kept secret in Waterbury. There was a professor in a college class who told his class he'd be giving them a test. And he handed out, no, this is not it. He handed out such a paper to everybody. And he asked everybody, this was the question of the test, what do you see? And everybody wrote, they see a black dot on a white paper. Nobody said, I see a white dot. A black dot, I'm sorry. A white paper with a black dot. And it's a fascinating study which shows that actually the brain is wired to react to a stimuli first with a negative response. That's really the brain is wired like that. It takes an extra processing to react positively. And my son pointed out, this is actually Hananya, there's a halacha regarding an esrog, that if it has a black dot, and it's amazing that the esrog actually represents the person, and there is a halacha that if the black dot, it's only puzzled if you hold it up away from you and you could still see the black dot even when looking at it, and it's a way that makes it puzzle. And a few weeks ago, we read we learned Parshas Re'eh, and we know that the first pasuk is Re'eh Anochi Nasati L'chem es habracha v'sachvala. And I was thinking, it really could have said Hinei Nasati or Shema Nasati. Why Re'eh? And it uses a lashon of seeing, because I really think the bracha and the kala, or how we view our lives, is really up to us. We are the narrators. Picture those kids' books that have the pictures. We write those couple of words on bottom. The pictures are the set of circumstances that we're given, and it's up to us how we narrate it. And Mimi, we didn't forget about you. Mimi gave her famous Dvar Torah in the Pirkei Avos Shir, and she said that the words nega and oneg, yeah, I was listening, okay? The words nega and oneg are comprised of the same letters. So literally, you can take the ayin here and take the ayin. Did you have a picture?
No.
Okay, all right. So literally, you can take the ayin, oneg, and nega. The difference is literally where you put the ayin. But if you want to think of it as figuratively, which is, I can't draw for the life of me, is ayin, is really where you put your eye, how you view something and how you see it. Literally, are you wearing the dark glasses, or are you letting the sun into your life? And, I always wondered about the pasuk, mitzvah gedola lios v'simcha tamid. First of all, that tamid is where I have the question. Do we always have to be happy? What happens if you're going through challenging times and you can't? And what is simcha? So when we're upset or depressed, we sometimes try what we call retail therapy. We might buy the beautiful dress or the bag that we don't need, or we try what I call kakash cake therapy, and we eat something that maybe we regret later, moment on your lips, lifetime in your hips, and all that. But it does not work. It only is momentary happiness. Why? Why doesn't it help? You buy that dress, you're happy, you pay for it, you bring it home, you look at it, and that's about it, and it fades. Because all these things are physical things. And simcha has to come from our nefesh. That's why, truthfully, if you want to help yourself when you're depressed, do something nice for someone else. It really works. Gratitude for what we have and focusing on the positive is the key to getting through and growing through our challenges. It's easy to jump on the gratitude bandwagon and sing Thank You Hashem and get all the swag. You get the sweatshirts, you get the bumper stickers. But really, how do we inculcate gratitude into our daily lives, especially when there are so many challenges alongside? And some people will tell you, gratitude journals, but I don't think it carries you throughout the day. You open up your notebook, you wrote down, thank you Hashem for this, thank you, close your journal, and you start your day. So, I spoke about something, and I just mentioned it in passing in the first year. I couldn't believe that this is what everyone took and just went with it. And for 2 years, I'm getting calls from people how this changed their life. And it really happened, this aha moment, by chance. It was pre-Pesach season, the year that Yisrael was nifter, and it was probably my 10th time going to the grocery for the week. I said, I can't believe I have to go to the grocery again, like we all do. and I was by a red light, and I had plenty of time to think. It was from my house to Pomegranate, which is a 5-minute ride, but pre-Pesach could take you an hour. So I'm sitting by the red light, and I said, I cannot believe I have to go to the grocery again. And then I had my aha moment, and I said, I don't have to go to the grocery. I get to go to the grocery. 2 words. I just changed 2 words. And I said, I get to go because Baruch Hashem, I'm healthy. I can walk, I can drive, I have who to cook for, I have children, grandchildren to cook for, a family, I have the money to shop. Now I'm still sitting by that red light and nothing changed, and I'm still going for the 10th time, but suddenly I felt like I was the luckiest person. So instead of saying, I have to go to my child's Hanukkah party, let's say I get to go. And you have to go to PTA, I get to go hear teachers speak about my child because my child is healthy, can go to school, can function and learn. I'm still working on this, like when I have to do laundry and dishes, but it's a work in progress. And in my practice, I do a lot of parenting sessions. And in my sessions, I strongly emphasize the importance of quality time with our children. And I'm a firm advocate of what I believe and what I call are the miracle moments. Sorry, I must have revised this like 50 times. Okay, and oh, I can do this without it. And I tell parents 10 minutes with each child every night. They get to choose what they're doing. Non-negotiable, you have to do it every night. And then I see the parents like squirming in their seats and they're like, every night? Can I like take them out once a week? I'm like, no, every night. They say, like, so I have to do this for 10 minutes every night? And I say, yes. And here's where the things I don't say. You don't have to do it. You get to do it. And what I don't say is that I would have given up everything to have 10 minutes to talk to my son. And what I'd also like to say before we conclude is, you know, today we throw around the term unconditional love. We hear about it all the time. What is unconditional love? Unconditional love is loving somebody without expecting anything in return. And that's the love that we had Yisrael. We could not expect anything in return. And we loved him unconditionally. And this is what we need to do for all our children. Unconditional love doesn't mean that you love everything they do or you agree with them, everything they do. But we love them, and children have to know that whatever they do, we still love them. And this is really what we ask of Hashem, and we should really try to emulate his words. We say, Avinu Malkeinu Chaneinu Vaneinu Ki Ein Vanu Masim. Sometimes we don't bring nachas to Hashem, but we ask Hashem anyway, please love us. And I'd like to end just with a thought that summarizes the main points. Rabbi Leaf from the Aguda, who was our Rav also, came to our house every single day during the Shiva. And he knew that I was doing all the talking because I was definitely better off that way. We don't want to go through what not to say when you go to Nachamava. So I was doing all the talking, and every day he would ask me, so what were you mechadish today? And on the last day of the Shiva, I said to him, you know, all the years when I was in so much emotional pain, I found it comforting. I always tell myself, you know, when Mashiach comes, I'm going to be first online with all my questions. And after sitting there for 7 days with Shiva, there was like a paradigm shift in my perspective. And I really realized that when Mashiach comes, it's all going to be clear. And when I was reviewing, I was telling my son Hanania about this insight. This goes back 4 years ago. He shared with me something really beautiful that I'd like to end with. We say in Psukkah de Zimra on Shabbos, Tefillah Moshe, and it continues, and at the end of it, I can't quote that because it's really long. But what we say at the end is, Samchenu kimos inasenu shnos re'inu ra. Samchenu, make us happy like the days that you made us suffer. The days that we saw bad. And going back to what I said before, why use the term ra'inu? Why doesn't it just say the days that were bad? Because nothing is bad from Hashem, it's just ra'inu, how it appeared to us. So you would expect that the next pasuk would be like, okay, so now we suffered, bench us with this, give us nachas, give us this, give us that. No. What's the next pasuk? Yeral el avadecha v'hadarcha al pneim. We would, so it says, what do we ask Hashem in the next pasuk? May we see your work, meaning may we understand your actions, and then we'll understand why we suffered. This tefillah is only said on Shabbos because, as we keep mentioning, Shabbos is me'ein olam haba, a glimpse of olam haba, when everything will be clear. We ask Hashem to end all the pain and suffering, and to bring Mashiach when we'll be reunited with our loved ones, and the revealed goodness will be known to all, and it will be a true Me'ein Olam Haba. Thank you everyone for listening and for coming.
Shaindy, I have to go with that one. Amazing. It's exactly what I needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you everyone for coming.